Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Adam Live. ASK is the acronym for Always Seek Knowledge. I hope that this and each and every episode encourages you to learn a little bit more about yourself, about others, and about the world around us. I find that, the more we ask questions and the more we get feedback and understand, the more we look at life a little bit different. And I have found that looking at life differently, that's where change can occur. That's where transformation begins. So I encourage you to ask, always seek knowledge. This week's episode, Meetings That Move the Needle. Let's begin. Let's stop having meetings about work and start having meetings that, create momentum. A bad meeting drains energy. A great meeting creates clarity, accountability, and action. You know, I was probably about a month ago, and I don't want to be political, but the meeting we had was specifically about this thing called, it's been coined diversity. It's been called belonging, engagement. I just go back to my core. Seek knowledge, as mentioned earlier. Learn a little bit more about yourself. Learn about where you came from. And then learn a little bit more about where someone else came from, possibly through dialogue. Say a little bit about your ancestry to someone, about where you came from, maybe the homeland, the country, the cuisine, the culture, the habits, the rituals. And if someone engages you, it's probably a pretty good idea that you're prepared to talk about your culture and share a little bit of your background. Some of that is sharing knowledge, but you have to know it first. Necessarily telling someone about something, that just sort of turns into a lecture. And that really doesn't have any place, as far as I'm concerned, with being at work. These are the conversations that should be engaged either while working together, while maybe having lunch together, while maybe being at a social event together. These are the conversations that come up or should come up. Not necessarily talking about the dismay of someone else's promotion or how someone else seems to be moving up faster than someone else or how they don't like the process at work because it's draining or some type of a report that is just mundane and nobody's reading it anyway. See how these meetings can be draining? And I don't think a meeting has to be about how we need to treat each other. I think a meeting should be how we collectively make a business better. At least those are the meetings that we have here at Ask Adam Live. We don't necessarily talk about other people's issues, cultures, how they're feeling. That's not the place for it. And I think that's where we've really blurred the lines, is that there's a time and place for that. And we've really stepped away from the opportunity of having social engagement to just being a lecture-based situation. I am going to digress at this point because it's already frustrating. And this obviously is not moving the needle for this episode. Pardon the pun. See, the modern workplace, it just gets overloaded with meetings that are too long, unclear, repetitive, really no ownership, and also no measurable outcome. We talk about things we're going to do, but we don't place a deadline on when it's going to get done. So you pretty much leave the meeting confused. It's preoccupied your time. And if, like most industry, when the boss is away, the teammates will play. The hidden costs of these things, and I see it constantly, is the loss of productivity, the mental fatigue, the frustration after the meeting or during the meeting, and then disengagement that you have through leadership. That's why we don't have these at the Ask Adam Live. institute. It just doesn't happen. When we sit down, we're talking about productivity. We're talking about things that we're doing, constantly looking at productivity, looking at different ways to do things, how we can integrate things, how we can be more productive. And quite frankly, when we're more productive and we're doing things, that actually frees up time in the day to maybe spend the last half hour of our working day having a communication about how great something was or how possibly implementing something different would work better. I'm not against shortening the week. I'm not against shortening the week. And I also don't mind 40 hours. But man, if we could spend 30 hours of solid work and then 10 hours through the week of broken up time where we're actually being productive and engaging with people, if we're not already doing that. For instance, I remember operating a supply chain warehouse back in the day, and I always encouraged the team to hustle and get things done. And they actually were excited to be able to have about a half hour to 20 minutes of just milling around waiting on the clock. But as I stood there and approached them while they were milling, I also encouraged them to talk about things that are, well, exciting, especially on the proverbial Friday. End of the weekday for them, I encouraged them to spend that 30 minutes talking with and amongst each other and challenging what they were going to do this weekend. I also encouraged it on a Monday to follow up with them and say, hey, now that you've gotten back, if you haven't already talked about it, follow up the night by saying what you did. Was it exciting? Did you learn something? Did you do something you probably don't want to do again? And this learned from each other a little bit about each, about what they did, their habits, stuff they enjoyed, their hobbies. And this created a little bit more camaraderie amongst them where they actually started to engage me. Charlie. I remember Charlie came to me in the middle of a work period and he said, hey, you need to go talk to Damien. You wouldn't believe what he's done this weekend. It's pretty interesting. I'm sure he'd like to share it with you. And, well, I don't want to spoil it, so he should say it himself because he's really excited when he talks about it. And so I did. And that was non-work related conversations. And I know many industries frown upon that, but guess what? Your industry's probably failing anyway, so keep frowning. But when I went to go talk to Damien about his weekend and said, hey, how was your weekend? Not somebody told me, but how was your weekend? Oh, it was amazing. And they started describing all the things that they were doing and how they were starting to implement things in their life. And it was pretty cool. And so I asked, hey, did you share that with the guys? I couldn't wait to get to work to do it. See, work is something you do. Conversations are something you have. Learning, education, and excitement, that's something you get to do. We need to do more of that. And I think you'll find that when you implement that into your business, that level of camaraderie, well, those are the meetings that move the needle. Those are the meetings that create the encouragement and even the hustle. You know, when we come down to crunch time a couple of times where we really had to get something done and maybe we didn't get that talk time at the end of the shift, it was always a challenge. Hey, you want to hurry up over there? You're interrupting our talk time. Hey, I'm excited to share something with the group later on, but if we don't get this done, we're not going to have it. And then I got to wait till tomorrow. Or, hey, I can't wait to hear about what you did this weekend, so you want to pick up the pace? And it vicariously created productivity through just being excited about conversations. Now, I know I'm talking about the warehouse floor, but this could also be applied to the boardroom. Yes, you sit at the table, you talk about business. But if all you're doing is droning about business for an hour or two and then you conclude the meeting, well, guess what? I'm leaving that meeting just as uninspired as I walked into it. And congratulations, I don't even work for you. But if you were to maybe have a discussion prior to the meeting or after the meeting, that people are free to discuss something. Hey, we now conclude this meeting. I open the table to about 15 to 20 minutes of free talk. Anyone like to share what they've done this weekend or what they're planning? How about some new expectations for the company? What would you like to see changed? These are free conversations. No judgment, no minutes, no recordings, no penalization. And I found by having these open conversations with my teams, well, I got much better feedback. And even the harsh feedback felt more like a conversation. And it wasn't frustration or yelling. It was that they knew they had an open forum in which to discuss something, not whine or complain, but actually conjure up some really awesome sentences in their presentation to share something they maybe disliked. And that also created some amazing personal growth within them. I've found that many times these short, focused meetings solved some of the major issues quickly. So I share with you today that in the 5-part structure of high impact meetings, you're going to learn how to reduce wasted conversations. You're going to learn how to increase ownership and execution, as well as how to create meetings people actually value. The big idea. Meetings should do one of 3 things: solve, decide, or align. And if they do none of those, they probably should not exist. I'm going to repeat that for the leaders listening because I think it's worth saying again. If your meeting is not solving, deciding, or aligning, they probably should not exist. You really should not have a meeting just because it's on the calendar to get together and drone about the same issues on and on. You're either coming together to solve, decide, or align. You know how much I love acronyms. And in this particular episode, I'm going to bring an acronym right to the table. The MOVE framework, MOVE. Remember, the object is to move the needle. M, mission first. Key question, why are we here? See, every meeting needs a purpose. Every meeting should have a desired outcome. And every meeting, a time boundary. See, without a mission, conversations just drift. They go on. Or someone goes on to some dissertation about something that really isn't part of the focus. And then all of a sudden we're talking about something that, well, really isn't part of the platform, really isn't going to get solved that day, and really isn't going to bring anyone to alignment. It's just somebody droning about something that, well, is important to them, but is important to the business. Then we need to, as I said, solve it or align to it. Because when that droning goes on, people disengage. Almost so powerful that the person outside, possibly even cleaning the floor of the room outside in the hallway, they're even disengaged and they're not even part of the meeting. That is how strong this can occur. Not to mention, dominant voices at the table tend to always take over. The one person who's not afraid to speak seems to always speak. And when they speak, it's with a rather loud voice, and they always have something to say. And quite frankly, I don't care how loud your voice is and how strong your points are, and if you brought a presentation or flip charts or whatever, people are still going to go to sleep to that loud voice. So sit down, calm down. And at this point, I almost encourage those quiet voices, create that space that they can speak up. Don't let the dominant voice always be the one speaking. Yes, we've heard from you before. I like to open the floor to someone who has a different idea. And you might find the quietest person in that room has a stellar idea that they've kept to themselves. They've also probably slowed down their momentum. And I'm going to a secret out is you let that one person speak and let that idea fall on the table from them, and you start getting some feedback and construction towards building that idea into something that can be implemented. Again, solving a problem, what meetings are for. You're going to find more energy explode from that individual because now something is happening within inside of them that's becoming magical. They're being heard, they're being talked about in a good way, and their ideas mean something. You might find they're going to bring more meetings to the table. Not as often, but when they do, you'll discover they're pretty damn powerful. O is ownership and roles. Confusion kills execution. Every meeting should clarify who owns what, who supports, who decides, who follows up. See, a meeting without ownership really just becomes a memory instead of a movement. Remember, confusion kills execution. So make sure we understand who owns and what the roles are. A practical tool. Use a driver, followed by support, and create a deadline. What's the task? What's the driver in this task? The movement, if you will. Who is in support of that movement? And what's the due date by the time this needs to get done? These are really only the 4 simple categories of what this meeting should entail. And once you have that information, it's pretty safe to conclude. V is velocity through focus. See, most meetings lose momentum because they just revisit the old conversations. Many times people are over-explaining or regurgitating what they explained before, or they have to explain something 5 different times. Also, the tolerating of side tangents, somebody always seems to have the same reoccurring issue. Well, again, if the meeting's not solving the problem, then it's not an effective meeting. And this, I found, is most powerful. The longer the meeting, the lower the energy. Keep these meetings tight. They don't have to always be an hour. Probably don't even have to be a half hour. Everybody shows up on time. Everybody sits down. You give it a good, strong 15 to 20 minutes of focused intensity. You've created enough velocity to create a tornado outside of that conversation. So keep it tight. Keep it concise. Hey, this is what we're going to do. And you'll find that through that focus, the team will start to understand that these meetings are important and that these meetings are powerful. And if you have something, you need to bring it to the table immediately. When that opportunity comes, you want to be the person with the idea at that table. Because in this short period of time, you pretty much get 1, maybe 2 good ideas. And if there's 5 people with an idea, well, now we're fighting in the arena. And that's not a bad place to be. But if you're having a weekly meeting or a daily meeting, you know that your next opportunity is tomorrow or next week. So keep your idea and bring it to the table. Because until that problem is solved, it's still going to be relevant. So the strategy is have an agenda visible at all times. If you have a PowerPoint, that should be the only thing on the screen is the agenda. Some starting remarks, some discussion, opening of discussion or new ideas, and conclusion. And how do we get implemented? Nobody needs to go on with any kind of flashes or PowerPoints or just going on with something. Keep it simple. And remember, any item that's off topic, send it to the back lot. Send it out to park. someone starts to engage in something that's not part of that agenda, you got to stop it right away. Yes, great idea. Could you bring that up tomorrow? Could you bring that up at next week's meeting? Also, time block discussions. If there's something that's important, might exceed that 15 or 20-minute block of the particular meeting, say, great, I open the floor to 10 minutes of discussion, and that's it. Set a timer. We all have these smartphones around us, and they all have timers. And if you really want to stay antiquated, get yourself an egg timer. Turn that thing to 10 minutes, throw it in the middle of the table, and when that thing goes off, we're done. I find that that creates a little bit more of urgency and not wasted time. If you have an idea, you're going to speak about it, and you're not going to beat around the bush, as they say. You're not just going to hem-haw around. You're going to express with clarity what it is that you are trying to implement, your idea, and be good with it. I also found that by keeping this time thing in a proper sequence, there's none of that silence in the room of who wants to speak next, because people are going to come to that meeting with energy. They're going to want to speak first. They're going to want to have their time. Remember, keeping top 3 priorities only. We don't have a 20-point plan. We have 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 for this meeting. We're not stretching it out too much further. Remember, complexity is the enemy of execution. Speaking of execution, that brings us to E, execution and accountability. Meetings should end with a discussion, deadlines, accountability, and next actions. To just walk away from the table without any of these, well, you pretty much wasted your time because you haven't concluded the meeting properly. You need to have some point of execution. What was decided? What happens next? Who owns it? And when do we reconvene? See, this is a measurement of accountability. This also gives you something to come back to. Because now that you've categorized what you've decided and what happens next, and whoever brought that to the table, you already know for the next meeting who's going to speak first. Because you're going to bring the person of ownership to the table and say, where are we at? What have you done? And again, they're not going to sit there in silence, unsure of whether they should speak. They're going to come to the table with excitement and energy to share. Maybe even that they've learned something to the point of failure. But they're going to bring something with energy. And again, this is going to consume a much shorter period of time. Hey, we've implemented a couple of these steps and discovered they're not working so well. We're going to go back to the table, try a couple other implementations, and we will let you know next day or next week, whenever that meeting comes back. And they're done. See how short and concise and also energized. Even a failure is brought to the table. This is important. Bringing energy to the meeting, not bringing your cup of coffee, your notepad, and a very depressed look on your face to the table because you're going to have yet another discussion you're not sure about. Because not only does the person who owns it is going to bring something to that next meeting, you're also going to have people show up to that meeting that want to know, how did it go? Because if it's not part of their department, they're going to be interested to know what was implemented, what was succeeded, possibly what was failed. But they're going to want to learn. So they're going to come with some level of excitement, as well as learning for themselves how to implement change. And maybe it's something from that where they're going to be the next person of ownership, and they're going to have to bring it to the table. And they're going to have to share that same energy of success or failure. See, people don't rise to vague expectations. They rise to the clear commitments. And if you want to implement your team to have a clear commitment and to have a positive meeting and to always be energized whether it's before the meeting, during the meeting, or after the meeting. These are the steps. This is the move, the MOVE, that moves the needle for meetings. Now, I wouldn't give you the complete information unless I went to, well, the other side. So I'm going to briefly share with you the meeting killers. Common problems, again, no agenda, no leader, too many attendees, no action items, status updates that could have been emails. Many times not having an agenda, and it's a simple template. And you could almost do it in the conclusion of the previous meeting. Who has the call to action? They're the first person at the table. There should be a leader, a continuous person, a name that never changes, for instance. How many attendees? When you get so many people involved, well, even a 20-person meeting, if it's 20 to 30 minutes, that's less than a minute for each person to speak. Now, I know we talked about tightening up the clock, but yeah, just the people that affect these certain things. So we're talking about senior leadership. We're talking about immediate leadership. And that's usually, I don't know, 10 to 12, maybe 15 people at most. And even those might be somebody that's just taking the notes, that's really never going to speak. And status updates, I can't tell you how much I have disapproved of sitting in a meeting where somebody's going to drone on about the success numbers of what they've done. Honestly, I could see that in some kind of a group chat or in an email system where you just take a picture of your dashboard and send it to me. I can see how you're doing. I can see your success or failure, if that's even important to me. But someone standing there droning on about we're here and we're doing this and we're going to try to implement, I don't care. It's not my department. It doesn't matter. I want solutions. I want problems brought to my table, and I want to figure out how we're going to align. Your statistics honestly don't matter to me because your statistics are kind of a your thing. Now, if you want to bring to the table, hey, my statistics have been continuously failing, and I want to implement this change because I believe that will make drastic changes to my continuous failure, well, great. And if that has to implement other people peripheral to you, well, great. Now we're having a meeting, a discussion, and we're moving the needle. See how that makes sense? But just droning on about your continuous success or failures, I don't get it. Some meetings should have been sticky notes and even a thumbs up emoji. They're just that simple. So let's learn how to effectively use our time and use the MOVE framework. Remember, mission first, ownership, velocity, and execution. Meetings should create clarity, confidence, and commitment, not confusion. I invite you to download the Meeting Momentum Blueprint. Audit your next meeting using the MOVE framework. Eliminate one unnecessary meeting this week and share your biggest takeaway with hashtag Move the Needle Meetings and add the @AskAdamLive tag. Meetings are not the work. Meetings should create the momentum for the work. This has been another excellent episode helping you to move the needle in meetings. Now let's us all go out and make it a great day.